Let's go.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Happy Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you're new, I do want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on once a month, actually, for the RBN Monthly Roundtable. And you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Welcome back, guys, and shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. We have so much to get into, fam, and all I want to say is go Patriots, go Patriots, go, 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 go. That's right. For those of you who are not into football, the Patriots did win on Sunday, and they are moving on to face Denver, the Denver Broncos in Denver. And I am nervous about that game because we all know Denver has like the higher altitude. And I remember Tom Brady said before that was one of the hardest places for him to play just because of the altitude. But I don't think a lot of people expected us to make it as far as we got. So I am excited. I was kind of in my little, cave this weekend, just watching like football playoffs and all that jazz. And apparently, I believe the Winter Olympics has started, which for whatever reason does not get as much love as the Summer Olympics. I'll never understand it. But I do think the Winter Olympics are pretty cool. I really like to watch figure skating. I've always liked that. I like to watch skiing a little bit too, because I don't know how to ski. I tried once. That was laughable. Snowboarding competition's pretty cool. I like the Winter Olympics because I know I can't do any of those sports. None of them. So I have a lot of respect for people that participate in the winter sports. Now, Summer Olympics, I do like those too, but I have a special kind of love for Saul said bobsled team. Jamaica's got a bobsled team. Cool runnings. Stu of Mad said Sabby snowboarding. Like I'm telling you guys, I tried that years ago when I was in college, and it was laughable. So I realized that's not for me, but that's okay. That's all right. I like to watch other people other people partake in it. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have quite a bit to get into tonight. Tonight's theme is somebody's watching me. Somebody's watching me. Kind of like the song. Kind of like the song. Let's start out by giving shout outs to people in the chat, ladies and gents. Don't forget to answer that poll question. I'm curious to see how many of you are familiar with the World Economic Forum. Of course, that has started. So don't forget to answer that question as well. All right. Shout out to Monty. Love your shows and information you are getting out to the public. I have watched Whitney on and off through the years. Every time my alarms go off instinctively, I just don't trust her. Just my opinion. Well, you're entitled to your opinion, Monty. But welcome. What's up, Adele? The West enemies are in a state of grace. It has everything to do with integrity and benevolence, their sincere desires for world peace. Shout out to Blockbuster, says hi. Greetings, Go Artist, says cheers, early birds. What's going on? CBC Voter says happy Tuesday, Sabby and Eric T. Red. Greetings, Bill Bobby says, when life hands you Don Lemon, you can't even make lemonade. He's the worst lemon for sure. You know, Don Lemon has moved on some of his positions, I will say, in particular in the past couple of months. I have noticed that. That story is very interesting. Wait till we get to that one. Shout out to Silver Surfer, says Sabrina, what's going on? Shout out to Steve Barrett, said, just got done. Candace Barron, ready for Webb Sabs. I haven't had a chance to see that yet. Shout out to Rich, says the World Economic Forum annual meeting, a spirit of dialogue, January 19th through the 23rd. Yeah, we're going to get into that. Greetings, Cloudness, says, well, these DNC shields are trying to get Black Americans out there to protest this foolishness. Please stay on code and stand down with these fraud Black Panthers and the tomfoolery. Salute, Sabby, B1 fam. I'm probably going to talk about the Black Panthers on Thursday evening because I did receive some new information about that earlier today that I just need to vet. So stay tuned for that because, yeah, you know, I don't know, I was looking kind of sus. Greetings, Lorez says, hi, Sabby, Eric, Corey, and RBN fam. Hope everyone had a good weekend. Sabby, your Patriots are in the AFC chip. Think they can go all the way? Smash the like, y'all. I don't even want to try to guess because I don't want to jinx them. I am superstitious when it comes to sports, so I don't want to jinx them. But I will say I don't think many people expected them to make it this far. So there you go. Shout out to Hannah, says, Sabby. Greetings, Active Guardian said, hi, I have been hoping that somehow some prosecutions on civil suits will result from her evidence presented in her 2-volume set, One Nation Under Blackmail. Yeah, same here. Yeah, if you guys haven't had a chance to read those books by Whitney Webb, they're really good. One Nation Under Blackmail. It's volume 1 and volume 2. So she called a lot of these things out years ago. Shout out to Notori, says fire and love. Greetings, Ali says hello, everyone. And shout out to Ellen, says mutual aid workshops with Sabby Sabs. Yes. And I will announce that again at the end of the show tonight. Tomorrow, via my newsletter, I'll send out the Zoom link and the invite for those who want to attend. So look forward to that, ladies and gents. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right. Josie said, go Rams. Josie, I was actually rooting for the Bears in that game just because the Rams won not too long ago. So I was kind of rooting for the Bears, you know, the Bears. I feel like they haven't been there in a long time. But yeah, I don't know. That was a close game towards the end. But hey, Matthew Stafford, 37 years old. And he doesn't look like he's 37 years old. So he's been there for quite some time. And I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. We'll have to see. All right, ladies and gentlemen, again, tonight's theme is Somebody's Watching Me, just like the song by Rockwell. And they are watching all of us, ladies and gents. Let's go ahead and give a shout out to Sabby Sabs patrons. Thank you guys so much for your support for being a Sabby patron. If you're interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators. Don't forget about Sabsters. I think they're pretty cool as well. We also have Sabbies, and they don't look too shabby. Hey, hey, hey. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, we also give thanks to members. There they are. And all of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker, ladies and gents. I want to give a shout out to a new Sabby patron. His name is Curvin. Let's give it up for him. And thank you and welcome to all of you. Hey, yeah, Curvin, not Kevin. You know, I looked at that twice because I was like, oh, wait, it's not Kevin, it's Curvin. Curvin. Somebody is watching me. Let's take a look at that thumbnail, ladies and gents, so you can see what we are discussing tonight. Here we go. Dun, dun, dun. Tonight, ladies and gents, we are discussing Whitney Webb is vindicated once again. We are going to tell you about what Whitney discussed. She's been on here a couple of times, but this was more recent. What she said that is now coming into truth. And I told you guys before how I am very much against this surveillance state. And I think if you're watching me, you probably are against it too. So we have to pay attention to what Whitney warned us and what is happening right now, the recent announcement that's coming forward about Palantir. We're also going to discuss Don Lemon apparently is not having a good week. Don Lemon versus the Department of Justice. They are trying to charge Don Lemon with inciting violence for doing journalism. Holy smokes, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get into that one. We're also going to discuss there is a alleged male accuser of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, I just heard about this, but in my research, I realized that this person has been saying this for quite some time, but for whatever reason, it is now trending on social media. So we're going to get into this alleged male accuser and this audio that has been released and the names that have been named. We're also discussing, if you are not aware, the World Economic Forum has started in Davos. You know, that event where all the rich people and political leaders get together and plan our future. That event. Larry Fink, who is there in the yellow square, he is the owner of BlackRock. He's another billionaire. They are laying out our future, ladies and gentlemen, and there's some interesting things that have happened at this event so far, especially what was said by the Canadian Prime Minister. I want everybody, we got to pay attention because like I said, I want to know what everybody's planning, right? Last but not least, this is probably a really big one. A new poll is showing that the majority of young Americans are leaving both parties. Not kidding, not exaggerating. Not 30%, a majority of young Americans are leaving both parties. Is that a sign for what is to come? We'll have to see. We'll have to see. So let's go ahead and get into our first story, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't had a chance to do so, please do me a solid and smash that like button. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. Again, the theme is somebody's watching me. And some of those people are at the World Economic Forum. It just kicked off in Davos. This is an event, again, where billionaires and political leaders get together and they basically decide what our future is going to be. One of the big issues that came up before was climate change. This time, they have turned their attention to AI and this idea of globalization. And some of the things that were said may actually shock you. Let's get started with this first clip here. This is coming from the U.S. Commerce Department. Globalization has failed. This is coming from Secretary Lutnick at the WEF. Everyone, check out what he says.
Well, I think you should start at a much higher level. Okay. We are in Davos at the World Economic Forum. And the Trump administration and myself, we are here to make a very clear point. Globalization has failed the West and the United States of America. It's a failed policy. It is what the WEF has stood for, which is export, offshore, far shore, find the cheapest labor in the world, and the world is a better place for it. The fact is, it has left America behind. It has left the American workers behind. And what we are here to say is that America First is a different model, one that we encourage other countries to consider, which is that our workers come first. We can have policies that impact our workers. Sovereignty is your borders. You're entitled to have borders. You shouldn't offshore your medicine. You shouldn't offshore your semiconductors. You shouldn't offshore your entire industrial base and have it be hollowed out beneath you. You should not be dependent for that which is fundamental to your sovereignty.
So, first of all, other countries do put their workers first, for the most part. Their workers, a lot of the ones that are allies with the United States, their workers have universal health care. They have paid family leave. They don't have to pay all this money to go to the hospital and have a baby. If you look at a country like France, I mean, they even get like, I guess you would call it not a nanny, but a temporary babysitter, like after they have a child, at least I think for the first 9 months. So the other countries have put their workers first. It's this country that doesn't put the workers first. But I want everyone to pay attention to what is happening here, right? You see, they have been paying attention. They've been watching what is being said on social media and also, I think, in independent media, although they probably would never admit it. They are now starting to use our jargon. They're now starting to use the same rhetoric that you're hearing many of us say, which is that we need to focus on people right here and we need to build up this country and people can't afford the cost of living. So what I want to caution everyone about is that be very careful this sudden turn that you're seeing happening at the World Economic Forum, where they are starting to use our rhetoric, because this is my prediction. My prediction is that they are going to find a new way to manufacture consent. And you'll see that when I get to the video about Larry Fink. These are people that for years didn't care about our pockets, didn't care about our kitchen table issues. They were concerned about raising money for the military industrial complex. They were concerned about killing people abroad. They were concerned about protecting and saving Wall Street. They weren't concerned about us when we lost homes in the 2008 housing crisis. They're not concerned about us right now. So I find it very hard to believe that now all of a sudden, all these rich people who are rubbing elbows with each other now all of a sudden want to take care of the everyday working American. So get ready for it, because you're going to start to hear more people and more politicians as well. They're going to use that rhetoric, but they don't intend to actually do anything about it.
On any other nation, and if you're going to be dependent on someone, it darn well better be your best allies, okay? And so that is a different way of thinking. It is completely different than the WEF. I viewed the WEF as not a flagpole in the middle, but in fact, they are the flag. Whichever way the wind blew, so it blew. You should have solar, you should have wind. Why are you going to do solar and wind? Why would Europe agree to be net zero in 2030 when they don't make a battery? They don't make a battery. So if they go 2030, they are deciding to be subservient to China, who makes the batteries.
Of course, had to bring China into this as well. Again, he says he's focused on America first, but he's also talking about what Europe is going to do. So he has an issue with what Europe is doing, but he's telling you that he's America first. Right now, let's get to this part here about Larry Fink. Again, Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock, another corrupt company. We've talked about them multiple times before on this show. He also is trying to play into this. He's talking about global elites, this problem with global elites. All of a sudden, this billionaire all of a sudden has a problem with global elites. Listen to this.
We believe that outside the United Nations, this is the largest gathering of global leadership of the post-COVID period of time. For many people, this meeting feels out of step with the moment. We hear all about the elites. And how does that play out in an age of populism? How does an established institution make a difference in an era of deep institutional mistrust? And there's some truth to the critique. I believe in this forum for a long time. I certainly wouldn't be leading this if I didn't believe that we can change and make the world better. But it's also obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next. If the World Economic Forum is going to be useful going forward, it has to regain that trust.
So he's talking about global elites, right? So you see what they're starting to do? They're trying to make you think, okay, we hear where you're coming from. We hear you. But Larry Fink is a global elite. Is Larry Fink going to say, you know what? I don't think it's right for me to be a billionaire anymore. I'm actually going to pay workers what they're owed, and I'm not going to be a billionaire anymore. I'm going to give my wealth. I'm going to distribute my wealth in such a way so that I am no longer a billionaire. No, of course, he's not going to do that. So if you have critique of global elites, he would obviously start with himself. But he doesn't want to do that. This is how you know they're not serious. It's just like they're just repeating the rhetoric that they're hearing, because the reality is they know that America is on the decline. They know it. And honestly, they probably knew it before we did. And they've been trying to convince us that it's the exact opposite. And they can't do that anymore. So now they're using our rhetoric. Here's another clip of him here. Larry Fink said at the WEF that the main objective of the WEF is to expose the public to a broad range of voices and ideas. So now all of a sudden, he wants people to hear different voices and different ideas.
That's the goal of this year's World Economic Forum at Davos, to expose people to wider ranges of voices, to a wider range of ideas, maybe even an argument, but one that we have deeper understanding from. And I think not all of it's going to sound as good as the one that you enjoyed at that moment, like in music. And like in music, you're not going to agree with everything. But if you're willing to listen, it might leave something with you inside. It might stay with you. And maybe you will evolve and be better for it. And that's the mission of the World Economic Forum this week in Davos.
So all these years that they've had the World Economic Forum with billionaires and these political leaders, now all of a sudden, Larry Fink thinks, well, we should probably hear from other voices. Like, it's just crazy. For years, these people have gotten together and they have decided what our future is going to be. They never cared about hearing from other voices before, but now all of a sudden it's let's hear from other people. You know, maybe there is a problem with these global elites, but you're a part of the globe. You're the global elite. It's not us. You know, we're not at Davos. We're not there. They are watching us. They are paying attention to what we have been saying. Now, let me tell you something else that came up that is very important. They have moved away from focusing so much on climate change, and now they've directed their sights towards artificial intelligence. And I think this is what a big part of this is about. Listen to something else he said there.
The world is going to be short power. Short power. And to power these data companies, you cannot have just this intermittent power like wind and solar. You need dispatchable power because you can't turn off and on these data centers.
So does everybody hear what he said? The world is going to be short power. This is why they're focusing so much on energy. And if the world is short power, we're not going to be able to power those data centers. Notice what he does not say. He doesn't say the world is going to be short power. And if the world's short power, then people aren't going to be able to power their homes. No. So here's my prediction. Get ready for something like this. Don't know if it'll happen during our lifetime, but just follow me here. If the world becomes short of power, as Larry Fink said, who do you think they're going to prioritize the power for? It won't be for us. Don't be surprised if at some point we have to ration electricity, meaning that only a certain amount of electricity could be used at homes, and the majority would be used to power these big, giant data centers, which I would argue they don't need. We've gone all our lives without these data centers. Now, all of a sudden, they need data centers, and they need them because they want to advance and increase artificial intelligence. What I am telling you is that they are going to put more energy and resources into artificial intelligence than they will put into us, because they can get to the point where they will use artificial intelligence to do some of the things that we currently do. He's putting it all out there on the table for you and letting you know right now. We need more power and energy, not so that people can power their homes or their apartments or their businesses, but so we can power these data centers that they continue to build all across the world, not just the United States. That's also why they want Greenland. It's not just because of the minerals and resources there. It's also because they want to put another data center there. These are the people. And that's why I say, I keep telling you guys, you know, and people don't agree with everything, and that's fine. But I keep telling you guys, at the end of the day, it's us against them. Us against them. I want to show you this new idea they're proposing at the WEF. In Davos, there's a launch of a new social media platform called W. Everyone, write that down. Let's remember this when this social media platform is released, because we don't need to sign up for it. This new social media platform called W, to counter the misinformation on other social media platforms. Here's part of the introductory video at the debut event. Listen to this. They tout actual verification and no bots, and being hosted on European servers. So this is what they're planning, folks. This is why I say keep your enemies close. So it says here, let me mute this because it has the music there. Something is broken. We no longer trust what we see online. Our feeds are not built for people, but for power, money, and manipulation. So let's just play this here. Children grow up in noise. Foreign interests shape what we see. We are tracked, profiled, and manipulated by algorithms and AI. Authenticity is fading. Yet, we all want the same thing: real people, real conversations. So I'm going to tell you what they mean by this in just a second. That's why we're building W, a social network where people come before algorithms and where free speech and privacy are real. First of all, we all know that it's not going to be pro-free speech, but essentially it's just another way for them to manipulate and to manufacture consent. So they're going to tell you there's no algorithm, there's no, AI. It's just real people and real information. But if you believe that at some point there's not someone behind the curtain that is going to determine and decide what is a part of that platform and what you can post on that platform, you are sadly mistaken. The fact that they're promoting it at the WEF is a big red flag that it's not something that you should sign up for. We are not going to trust the elites and this platform that they want to create. Now, can you trust any of the social media platforms? No. But for them to pretend like this is going to be something different is not. It's just going to be what they want you to see. They're already getting ready to do it. And whatever they decide to be misinformation is going to be misinformation. Doesn't mean it's actually true. We go on to President Macron, who, for some crazy reason, decided to show up at the World Economic Forum wearing sunglasses. I don't know if he thought he was the guy that sings that song, I Wear My Sunglasses at Night. What's that guy's name? Corey Hart or something like that? I wear my sunglasses at night so I can. I don't know what's going on. We're in a cartoon. The world is a clown show. But Macron here is speaking out apparently against these actions that have happened by Donald Trump. Listen to this.
We are reaching a time of instability, of imbalances, both from the security and defense point of view and the economic point of view. Look at the situation where we are. I mean, a shift towards autocracy against democracy, more violence, more than 60 wars in 2024, an absolute record, even if I understood a few of them were fixed. And conflict has become normalized, hybrid, expanding into new domains, space, digital, information, cyber, trade, and so on. It's as well a shift towards a world without rules, where international law is trampled underfoot, and where the only law that seems to matter is that of the strongest, and imperial ambitions are resurfacing. Obviously, the Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, which will enter into its 4th year next month, and conflicts continue in the Middle East and across Africa.
So he's calling out the wars that are happening right now. But we got to add this. You know, France contributed to these wars. They gave weapons and aid to Israel. I believe they also gave weapons and aid to Ukraine. It's not like they weren't a part of this. He's talking about it as if he had nothing to do with this. You went right along with it with the United States. You know, I don't know if the sunglasses are getting to him or what, but it's wild. This is laughable to me.
As well a shift towards a world without effective collective governance, and where multilateralism is weakened by powers that obstruct it or turn away from it, and rules are undermined. And I can multiply the examples of international bodies weakened or left by the key economies.
So I think some of this also has to do with the message that Donald Trump put out recently, that he wants to put tariffs on one of those countries is France, all of the European countries that are against him trying to steal Greenland. So Macron has voiced frustration about that, and so has other leaders, including the leader of Norway, Canada as well. We're going to get to him in just a second. But the sunglasses are just cracking me up there. I don't know. Like, it's just like I wear my sunglasses at night so I can. I don't know anyone that wears sunglasses at night unless you're trying to cover something up. Now we get to the Canadian Prime Minister here as well. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney told the WEF at Davos that the U.S.-led rules-based international order is finished and will not return. Let's get into this video here. It's wild and crazy in these streets.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself.
So he's not calling out names. And my thing is like, name names. The strong, he means the United States and Israel. The weak, the countries that are bullied by the United States and Israel. And I would go, obviously a step further to say, of course, like Gaza, the West Bank, Venezuela, all these countries, and or Gaza's not a country, but all these countries and all these people that are bullied by the West, basically, right? So he's also pissed at Donald Trump too because of this Greenland situation. And he feels as though, I also read that Canada feels as though if anything, Greenland should be, belong to them and not the United States, but they also feel like Greenland should be left alone. So there's a lot of things that are going on right now, folks.
And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along, to accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source. When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack.
But you've been a part of the same performance. I mean, Canada has gone along with the United States, you know, in lockstep through all of these interventions, through all of this type of global domination. You have been right there along with us to go along with it. And now all of a sudden he's trying to pretend like he's the, I don't know, like he's the high and mighty here. I'm taking the high road kind of guy, when you've been a part of all of this that he's complaining about, this world order.
Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim. This fiction was useful, and American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes.
And he went along with all of that. I'm not going to play the entire thing here, but basically what you're seeing is they're saying the things that we have been complaining about for quite some time. And so they want us to think that we hear you, we see you. And Canada now, you know, I guess he's making this grand stance because he's pissed about the whole Greenland situation. But had it not been for the Greenland situation, he wouldn't even be given the speech that he's given now. But the reality is, until I see any of these leaders, these countries, whether it's France, whether it's Canada, etc., push back and tell the United States government, F you, we're going to focus on what's good for our country, I just kind of see this as a trap. They want us to think that they understand us and they see what we're complaining about. But you don't see any policy being put forth to stop what they're doing. You know, as long as they're still funding the military industrial complex, as long as they're still going along with these things, then you know that they're not serious. So we have to be very careful that we don't fall for this trap, because I think what they're going to try to do is that they're going to use they're already starting to use our rhetoric. Politicians who are running, this is midterm season, and then you have 2028 presidential election. They're going to use the rhetoric that they know we want to hear, the populist rhetoric. But they don't plan on doing those things. It's just another way. They're just going to find a different way to manufacture consent, where they convince us that they're with us, but they're really not. They're laughing behind closed doors and say, I can't believe they fell for it. It actually worked, right? Because check this out. You know who was not there? The Iranian foreign minister will not be attending Davos, although he was invited last fall. The tragic loss of lives in civilians in Iran over the past few weeks means that it is not right for the Iranian government to be represented at Davos this year. That came from the World Economic Forum. So Iran was uninvited. However, look who was invited. Israeli President Herzog en route to Switzerland to take part in the WEF. Iranian FM presence was canceled, allegedly because of violence in the country, while Israel openly killed babies on a daily. You can see there's the plane here leaving from Israel to head to Davos. So it's laughable at this point in time. So the World Economic Forum will be continuing for a couple of days. I'll continue to keep up with that information. But if you're not watching some of those clips, they're on Twitter, you can check them out there. If you're not watching some of those, definitely check them out, because like I said, I want to know what they're doing. I want to know what they're saying. And these are just the things that they're letting us hear. We still don't get to hear the things that they say behind closed doors, the other plans that they have that they'll never let us hear. But the things that they put out there, you know, they're just basically planning our lives and our future without our consent. These are the people that are making these powerful decisions, the billionaire class. And none of us are invited to have a seat at that table. So I say, you know, somebody's watching me. They're watching us. They're watching, they're listening. You never know who is watching. And someone told me this recently. They said, you never know who is watching you, who is watching any of these other podcasters, who's reading some of these tweets that, you know, podcasters have online, et cetera, independent journalists. You never know. So pay close attention, because they're already on their way to try to manufacture a different type of consent. Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. Thank you so much, Danny, for the super chat. Sabby, I'm in Denver. Does that make us enemies? No, it doesn't make us enemies. I mean, I don't know how we're going to do anyway. Like I said, that altitude is no joke. Summer says, so glad I found you. You're my favorite. Oh, thank you and welcome. Thank you, Roger. Got email from PBI. They liked Earl Ellen interview. Thank you. Thank you. Christine says, your hair looks so pretty down. Does it? I couldn't get it to do what I wanted to do today. I was just about to put it up in a ponytail again. And I said, oh, this is it. But thank you. Thank you, Roger. Absolutely. It has failed. So can Trump focus on us? And thank you for this one, Roger. And not Israel, Ukraine, Greenland, and Venezuela. Thank you, Trusting. Focus on the policies. Otherwise, it's hot air. Thank you, Quandi. Always trying to keep us down. Thanks, Brad. We, the WEF, need more power and fewer plebs. And thank you for this one, Brad. FFS, stop reinforcing their elite self-beliefs. Thank you, Mario. He got DIC slapped. Okay. Melody said, hi, y'all. So glad a friend of mine told me about this channel. So interesting. I had never heard of this forum before. Very interesting. Yeah. Answer the poll, guys, when you get a chance. Just curious to see how many people are familiar with it. And welcome. Thank you, Texas. He says, fuck Davos. Thank you, Zaldivar. Macron's wife gave him a black eye, but it wasn't with her fist. Maybe there is something under those glasses. Thank you, Brad. Corey's Never Surrender is We the People's song. And thank you, Kenman. Vaclav Havel was an a-hole. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Let's move on to the next story. Let's do the damn thing. Okay. Well, we got some good news. At least I think this is good news. There was a new poll that was released that is showing that the majority of young people are leaving both parties. Now, it was just 4 months ago when the exact opposite was happening. I want to show you this clip here from TYT. I remember they were talking about this. Just 4 months ago, the numbers showed that people were leaving the Democratic Party and they were joining the Republican Party. I want to take you back to that. And then we're going to get into what is happening with the young voters. Are they waking up? 4 months ago, this was the writing on the wall.
Shows that the Democratic Party is in serious trouble. This is according to the data. I am not making this up. This is not my commentary. So don't punish us for being the messengers of this news if you happen to be a Democrat. So millions of Americans are apparently leaving the Democratic Party and choosing to register as Republicans instead, which is actually pretty surprising to me considering all the chaos that's going on right now under the leadership of the Republican Party. But nonetheless, we know this because 30 states track voter registration by political party. So we get this data in real time. And as you can see here, take a look at this chart. From 2020 to 2024, Democrats hemorrhaged voters to Republicans in every single one of the 30 states that track voter registration, pertaining to party affiliation.
The reason why this is so important is because it goes to show you this was not just Kamala Harris, right? So when people say, well, Kamala, wasn't a strong candidate, when people say that she got into the race too late, I mean, you guys know how I felt about that. I don't need to go through all that again. But what it shows you is this was not just about Kamala Harris. There was something that was happening across the board. And I've said this before, the Democratic Party, if they really wanted to be an opposition party, then they really need to be the party of the working class. And that's just not the party that they are. They haven't been that way in a long time. So I've said this before, that when we are having economic strain, what tends to happen is that people will swing from one end of the pendulum to the other one. They'll go from one side to the other. So this is why I believe Donald Trump won in 2016, because we had Obama for 2 terms, and Obama ran on a semi-populist message at that point in time. And he said hope and change, and it's a new day. Everything's going to be new. And I believe that, and those things didn't happen. And we had the 2008 housing crisis, which some of that started before Obama got in, but it took a while for people to even slightly recover from that. And I still don't think economically we'll ever get back to where we were prior to that 2008 housing crisis. But what ends up happening is that people go in the other direction and they say, well, let me give this a try because I was with you for 8 years and we lost our house, or this happened. So I'm going to swing in the other direction. Some people decided to take a chance on Trump because he was a businessman and said, maybe we need to vote for a businessman instead of a politician, right? So people swung in that direction. Then come 2020, again, another economic issue, the pandemic, right? People lost their jobs, people lost businesses. And by the time the money came in for these PPE loans for a lot of businesses, it was just too late. I watched a lot of small businesses close right here in Boston. So then people said, oh no, this guy fucked up too. I'm swinging back over to the other side, right? So this tends to happen. And then, people gave Biden a chance. And then under Biden, then we still had these economic issues. So then people was like, well, I guess we got to go back to the business guy. So it's not uncommon for something like that to happen when you don't have a true opposition party in place that's actually working for the working people, the working class, right? So that's how you end up with this. But the fact that now it's showing that people are leaving both, I think that says a lot.
As you can see, this map spans deep blue states like California, deep red states in the Midwest, and swing states like Arizona. Overall, Democrats lost just over 2 million voters, while Republicans gained just under 2.5 million. So I actually apologize. I mentioned how the voter registration went from Democrat to Republican and how surprising that is given how chaotic Republican leadership has been. But obviously that leadership began in 2025. This tracks voter registration between 2020 to 2024. So with that in mind, I'm actually not surprised at all.
It checks out because remember, it wasn't just Donald Trump winning the White House. Republicans also won. They got control of the House and the Senate. Right? So that makes sense. But I have some really good news to add to this now, because it turns out the young people have had enough. A lot of people are talking about this poll that was just released. A majority of young voters now reject both parties. Both. And of course, they had the picture of this guy. That just cracked me up. They had the picture of the guy here with the American flag like draped over him. Let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. U.S. political system is currently experiencing previously unimaginable levels of partisan and ideological polarization. And at the same time, public disaffiliation with both major parties is reaching historic highs. Let's get into this here. Gallup has been conducting a large sample, not small, large sample polls of partisan self-identification since the 1980s, and now reports that a record 45% of Americans consider themselves political independents. Self-identified Democrats and Republicans each represent a dismal 27%. Let's pause right there. What that tells me is that for all the people who say, we want an independent in the White House. We want a third party candidate in the White House. And I know we don't have ranked choice voting in every state, but hear me out. If that 45% of Americans that identify now as independent actually voted for the independent or the third party candidate, we could see a change. That's really what a lot of it comes down to. We could see a change. Let's go on more here. As of 2004, Democrats and Republicans were both at 34% of Americans, with 31% self-identifying as independent. Let's jump forward here. But now, independent self-identification is reaching levels that suggest something else is going on, and the trends may be intensifying. Gallup shows 54% of millennials and 56% of Gen Zers are now calling themselves independents. To some extent, that reflects a perennial phenomenon. Younger people typically show lower levels of political and civic engagement, often because they are moving frequently and are focused on completing educations and beginning careers and families. But as Gallup notes, today's younger folks are disaffiliating from the major parties at higher rates than their predecessors. This is a big number here, ladies and gents. I'm going to bring up two issues that I think may be part of it. The economy. Economic issues is a big part. These kids can't afford to put a down payment on a home. These kids can't afford to start a family. I mean, that hasn't changed since, when Bernie started running in 2016. This hasn't changed. Like, it hasn't, improved. So Gen Z, this generation, like, those were my students. So I used to hear about this all the time. Right? So that's part of it. The other issue on foreign policy, I got to tell you, this young generation, they are very much aware of what is happening geopolitically in the world. They're more focused and more attentive than I would say, I was when I was an undergrad in college. And they are less likely to fall for the mainstream media narrative about these conflicts. I think that may have been a shock to President Trump when it came to Venezuela, that the majority did not want the U.S. intervening in Venezuela. I think maybe they thought because it shifted from Gaza and he was focused on, if I can convince them this guy's a drug trafficker, then of course they're going to side with me with this one. But no. These kids are very resourceful and they have done their homework. I can tell you that. Let's go forward here as well. The higher rate of political independence also results from younger adults today being more likely than young adults in the past to identify as independents. The 56% of Gen Z adults identifying as independents today compares with 47% of millennials in 2012 and 40% of Gen X adults in 1992. Let's go forward here. University of Chicago poll showed 56% of respondents have an unfavorable opinion of the Democratic Party, 62% feeling the same way about the Republican Party. Again, a lot of this goes back to the core economic issues. If we were really America first in this country and we were taking care of our workers, our infrastructure, and this goes back, this didn't just start, I'm thinking about when the manufacturing jobs left this country. I'm thinking back to that. It didn't just start. Like, that wouldn't have happened if we were focused on American workers right here and to create a thriving country right here. Back during a time when you didn't have to have a college degree just to make a decent income. When people were able to work in factories, people worked for Ford, people worked for all these different factories. And I know because my grandparents, that's where they came from. They moved from the South up to the North to work for those factories. And people were able to, in some places like Detroit, were able to even get homes during that time. So, this has been a long time coming. It didn't just start overnight. Let's go on a little bit more here. While they may dislike party polarization, younger independents seem more focused on chronically distressing conditions in the country then they think both parties are failing to address. There we go. So they may gravitate in voting behavior toward theoretically very different candidates from either party that appear to care about their issues, whether it's the cost of living or U.S. complicity in humanitarian disasters like those in Gaza. And ultimately, this is one of the things I think that, we pointed out. It hurt Kamala Harris in 2024. So people can't deny what they're feeling. A lot of times these politicians, they have these interviews. They talk about what people need, like what younger people need, what Americans need, but they're not living that life. And a lot of them never lived that life. A lot of these politicians grew up either wealthy or they went to elite institutions, so they were able to get the networking that they need to create the generational wealth that they're creating. How many of these, we need to look this up one day. How many Congress members went to a state college or didn't go to college? How many presidents? How many? How many governors? They don't live the life that a lot of these people are living. Or they're like in their 70s or 80s, and they grew up during a time where even if they did have to struggle economically, when you do the math, it's not the same as struggling today. It's just one of these things that they just don't understand because they don't live it. So a lot of times these politicians, you see them on The View, you see them on MS Now, Fox News, and CNN, and they talk about what needs to be done for these people, but it's always discussed in like this academic way. They don't really talk to the people who have that pain. And when you see them have these town halls, the people are already pre-selected before the town hall even begins. So it's not real. It's not real. I don't see these politicians walking down the street, just especially going into poor, lower income neighborhoods. I don't see them talking to these people. They don't even want to talk to young people unless the audience is pre-selected. And then when they say something that they don't like, all of a sudden it's I am speaking. So no, but they don't know because they don't live that life. They don't live it. Precisely because younger independents tend to be marginally connected to politics. Their levels of voter participation and their partisan lean in any one election are hard to predict. Their most obvious characteristic at present is disaffection and alienation. That's coming from the Harvard Youth Poll assessment of under 30-year-old Americans this past fall. So you can see this here. 18 to 29-year-olds, they are citing instability, financial, political, and interpersonal has become a defining feature of daily life, shaping their outlook on their country and their futures. This is bad news for whoever is in power at any given moment, and help explains why the Republican gains among younger voters in 2024 are probably going to vanish in 2026. Exactly. See? Because neither party, and I don't even want to say addressing, it's not enough to address anymore. Neither party is fixing that issue. Neither party is willing to stop the wars. Neither party is willing to put forth policies that is going to allow people to have a quality of life in this country. And that's because most of them are bought and paid for. And the ones that are not, they may talk about it, but a lot of times they don't want to go against the leadership of that party. We saw that with Force the Vote. It goes on to say here, beyond the next election, though, there's no obvious way for either party to develop a consistent advantage among millennial and Gen Z voters who might oscillate between the donkey and the elephant brands or disengage altogether. The independent majority of young voters is likely to persist for the time being, adding an element of uncertainty and instability to a polarized political system. So where it says here that there's no obvious way for either party to develop a consistent advantage, well, that's false. You develop that by having a populist message and populist policies that are going to benefit the working class. That's how you do that. But they won't do that because their donors don't want them to. Ideally, this is what it all comes back to. It's the money. So I think we saw this some in 2024 where more people decided to stay home. And unfortunately, that's what happens. Like, what we were hopeful of is that the people who were upset with both of those parties at that time would come out and vote third party or for independence, right? Like, that's what we were pushing. And so what I would say to those young people is don't stay home, vote for an alternative politician. That's what I would say to do. Because the reality is this system needs to be broken. Now, I'm very glad, like I saw this as good news. Like when this was reported, I'm very glad that more people are identifying as independents. I would like to see even more of that. I would like to see that, the Democratic Party, as much as they pretty much are like, well, we got the black vote. I don't know. Like I've been saying this for a long time. I think black voters should register as independents. I think politicians have to work for your vote. And I think this whole, I'm just going to give my vote away just because, I think it's starting to run its course. Now, don't get me wrong, because Trump has been like insane and crazy, there are going to be more people that did not participate in 2024 that will come out to participate in 2028 to vote for the Democratic Party just to get Trump's policies out of there. So don't get me wrong. But the point that I'm trying to make is you can only play this game for so long. If these politicians do not deliver on economic policies that's going to benefit the working class, they will continue to have this back and forth with the pendulum. It keeps swinging and things will continue to get worse. And ultimately, you know what's going to eventually end up happening? The type of revolution that they don't want to happen. Ultimately, it'll lead to a revolution where people are out in the streets and people have had enough. But they already, the elite's already saying, well, we're going to replace some of these people, their jobs and stuff with AI anyway. So the point that I'm trying to make is all these policies that they run away from, they are eventually going to have to accept. If AI is going to take some of these jobs, then that means that some people will be unemployable. If some people are unemployable, that means that you're going to have some type of basic universal income is going to be a necessity. It is not going to matter whether you want it or not. And since we have a healthcare system that is tied to your place of employment, and if your job is no longer a job, that field is no longer there because it's taken over by AI, how are you going to get healthcare? That means we would have to have a universal healthcare system. So all these policies that they continue to run away from, eventually at some point, you are going to have them if they continue with AI the way that they're going right now. So I see this as good news, and I say again, like somebody's watching me, somebody's watching, someone's listening, they're paying attention. They're like, whoa, the younger people, they're not moving the way that we want them to move. Why are more of them registering as independents instead of coming back over to the Democratic Party? That's because you're not a real opposition party. That's why. And as long as they continue to have strain on their wallet, I think what you're going to end up seeing is more people just say, fuck it. Like, what's the point? And then ultimately, like I said, that'll lead to some type of anger and eventually a type of anger that you can't. And I don't know. Maybe that is what some of the elites want. Maybe some of the elites want people to get to that point where they just go out in the streets and they start tearing everything down. And so then, the elites can say, we're going to implement even more surveillance. They're going to do that anyway. But we are going to officially become a police state. You have chaos, so we need to fix that. Because ultimately, I kind of do think they do want chaos. They want people to lose their shit. So they can come in and they can implement more control. But they're watching and they're paying attention. That's why you're seeing these polls. Something else we need to show you. This also could be a factor. Both parties increased funding for ICE. You know, I tweeted this back in, this is the second time I tweeted it, June of 2025. I think that was the second time I tweeted that. Anyway, June of 2025, I shared this to show people that both parties increased funding to ICE. And this is another thing that's starting to get out. Yes, the way Trump has been handling this is insane and crazy. But I don't see too many Democrat politicians saying, okay, we need to stop giving all this money to ICE either. So that's another thing. Another reason why they could be looking in a different way. Either way, something's happening. Let's get to some of the comments, ladies and gents. Hey, hey, hey. Shout out to Wade Worth for the super sticker. Thank you, Wade. Thank you, radical leftist extremists. Both parties were conjoined from 1792 to 1825. Thank you, Krista. My team, Steelers and Bills, are out, so I'm rooting for the Patriots now for you, Sabby. Oh, thank you. Thank you. And I know, and people are like, what about Robert Kraft? Look, I despise Robert Kraft. I absolutely despise Robert Kraft. I despise the Krafts altogether. But that is my team. That is my home team. I'm here. I support the players. I absolutely despise the Kraft family. Thank you, Roger. See, Sabrina, I knew this would happen. It's like I always say, people are not going to move when you want them to move in the direction you wish for. That's true. You always do say that. Roger did tell me that. Thank you for this one. Or for them to move at the speed at which you want them to. But show some grace and patience. Eventually they will. Rise of the independent is the first step towards party abolition. Let's go. And thank you for this one, Roger. I've been waiting for this moment for all my life. I've been waiting for a girl like you. Oh, wrong song. I've been waiting for this moment. I can't think of the song. I'm sorry. Thank you for this one, Roger. Notice the words identify as, but that's not good enough. We need you registered as indie. So when politicians look at the voter rolls, they'll panic because they know they have to earn your vote. Yeah, that's the point that, that's the point that I was making. Like more people should register as independents. Okay. I know. I thought that was the song. Phil Collins. I've been waiting for this moment all my life. Hold on. Yo, Phil Collins was the jam back in the day, man. All righty. Okay, ladies and gents, let's go on to the next story here. This is an interesting one. If you haven't had a chance to do so, please smash the like. Thank you. And the theme, ladies and gentlemen, is somebody is watching me. I always feel like somebody's watching me and I have no privacy. Well, you're about to see that right now. So Don Lemon apparently is battling the Department of Justice. This is wild. I didn't believe it at first, but it's true. Apparently, the DOJ is trying to charge Don Lemon with basically doing journalism. I'm going to show you what this is, regardless of how you feel about this subject. I am very concerned about the Justice Department going after people covering stories that they don't feel is, good for them. And he wasn't the only journalist covering this. So long story short, there were a group of protesters protesting in Minneapolis, Minnesota against ICE. They decided to take that protest to a pastor at a church who they say is an ICE agent. And that's where Don Lemon comes in. Let's get started with this part here first. Midas Cherise says he looks terrified that his mask has been pulled off. Let's get into this here.
David Easterwood is a pastor here. He is also the director of the field office for ICE in St. Paul. So someone who claims to worship God teaching people in this church about God, is out there overseeing ICE agents. Think about what we've experienced. The murder of Renee Good at the hands of ICE. A Venezuelan national shot by ICE. A 6-month-old baby who almost died as a result of ICE unleashing military-grade weapons on our community. How dare you claim to be a pastor of God and you are involved in evil in our community?
Do you think Jesus would be understanding?
We're about worship
these folks.
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them?
No church had gathered for worship, which we do every Sunday.
So this is Don Lemon here to the left. He is interviewing the pastor, asking him, did you try to talk to the protesters here?
And we were interrupted by this group of protesters. Yeah. We asked them to leave, and they obviously have not left.
So he's supposed to be there claiming that he is allegedly an ICE director. That's what they're saying, this pastor here. You guys get the point there. Brian said, leave them people alone at church. Yeah, this is the question some people have. They're like, well, they're not allowed to confront people at a place of worship. This is one of the things that the Trump administration has put forward. They said, remember, they said this about you can't go into these synagogues to do that as well. You can't protest against people at a place of worship. It's interesting, though, because we did have protests like that during the civil rights movement as well. So some people are saying, leave them alone, approach him at a different time. Or whatever. But apparently, this is interesting because now the Department of Justice, the Assistant Attorney General, Harmeet Dillon, is now invoking the Ku Klux Klan Act to go against Don Lemon. They're really trying to charge him here. Like I said, I thought it was a joke at first, but because Don Lemon was there and he covered it, they're going after him. Now, I will say he's not the only journalist that was there. You guys know Status Quo News. They've been covering this since day one. I would say they're one of the first ones I saw covering the ICE raids. So it's not just Don Lemon. There are other people that are there, but they're going after him. And so I think the question that people ask is, why are they targeting him and not the other journalists that were there? Also, I saw the video earlier today. Midas Touch was also there on the ground in Minneapolis. Now, I'm not sure if they went into the church, but he wasn't the only journalist that was there covering in the church.
We will pursue charges in this case. I see various crimes that have occurred. Exactly what they are, I'm not going to flag, but the FACE Act has been mentioned as one of the predicates there. In other cases, the Biden DOJ used the Klan Act conspiracy charges tacked on to the FACE Act in the case of protests outside abortion clinics to bring much longer sentences. So there are a number of tools available to us. Who funded this? What else? What other crimes may have occurred? Was there a use of the wires or the mails in preparing for this event? Did anyone cross state lines to do this? All of those.
So what does that have to do with Don Lemon covering it, though? And this is a scary time. And this is why I say, you guys, again, I'm pro free speech. My whole thing is, I always pivot back to Julian Assange, right? I believe that journalists, you have the right to cover these stories. Whether people want them covered or not is another thing. But we are now entering into this realm where you could be targeted just for being there covering something that the DOJ is against. And again, why are they targeting him and not the other journalists that were there as well? And so I think that's the thing. It's really interesting. I've picked on Don Lemon a couple of times on the show. Over the past couple of months, it seems like he has moved in a way that I did not expect. Like, I feel like he's become more bold, because when I show you what he said about Nicki Minaj, his response to her, I was like, oh boy, here we go. I feel like since he's left CNN and as a little bit of time has gone by, I feel like he's become more bold. Like, he's saying things that I know he would have never said on CNN, right? So let's continue on here.
Those are potential predicates for additional federal charges.
Armin, I've just pulled up the Klan Act because this is the first time that I've heard this mentioned. This is a act that was passed in 1871, correction there, to combat the Ku Klux Klan and protect African Americans' voting rights, especially the Enforcement Act, which is known as the Force Act. So here's some of the information on screen. Would you mind breaking down for us, because we have just read the FACE Act and how this is an affinity to the FACE Act, an obvious and egregious demonstrable violation of the FACE Act, because they were entering a place of worship, harassing and threatening. We just played a video of a bearded man, who was threatening to attack the Christians that were worshiping there. So it seems like an obvious FACE Act violation. But the Klan Act here, it is on screen. First time I've heard it mentioned. Can you unpack this for us, Harmeet?
Yeah, the Klan Act is one of the most important federal civil rights statutes, and it goes back to the time when President Lincoln emancipated the slaves, and yet the southern states, Dixiecrats mainly, were refusing to give them equal rights. And in fact, that you had sheriffs and you had law enforcement harassing the newly freed slaves. So the Klan Act is a law that makes it illegal to terrorize citizens, to violate their civil rights, to get together and conspire to violate the civil rights. It is often used against law enforcement, but is now used against others as well. So whenever anyone conspires to violate the protected civil rights of American citizens, the Klan Act can be used to bring a conspiracy charge. We, in the federal law enforcement parlance, call this 241 and 242. Civil and criminal conspiracies. And so what the Biden administration did is, if 3 grandmas got together to pray outside an abortion clinic for the souls of the people inside, and including the unborn children, they would say, oh, that's not just a violation of the Klan Act, that's a conspiracy to violate the civil rights of women going in there to get abortions. And so we're going to add additional charges and punish that more and make it from a misdemeanor under the FACE Act to a felony under the Klan Act. And
so I wanted you to hear that part. That's wild, the Klan Act there. But notice what she did. Notice how she mentioned how the Biden administration used it. This is something I keep pointing to people, right? Everyone pay attention. It seems like, and you'll notice this when we get to that Whitney Webb story, it seems like the Trump administration, they have a way of using something that either was set in motion under the Biden administration or was done under the Biden administration and taking it to another level. This is what I've been saying. This is what I was telling you guys about the ICE stuff too. It's like they took things that were already set in motion and they expanded on it and made it even more wild and crazy, right? So Don Lemon did respond. Let's hear what he had to say here about this charge that they're trying to pursue.
The MAGA administration and the fake news MAGAs are losing their mind over something that's not even true. So let me just make it clear, because this assistant attorney general, I don't know, gosh, what's her name? It's something Hammett, Gillen or whatever. So I had no affiliation to that organization. I didn't even know they were going to this church until we followed them there. We were there chronicling protests. Once the protest started in the church, we did an act of journalism, which was report on it and talk to the people who were involved, which included the pastor, members of the church, and members of the organization. That's it. It's called journalism. First Amendment, all that stuff. For all of you people who believe in the First Amendment, absolutist, there you go. So why don't you talk to the actual person who is in charge of the organization and whose idea it was to have the protests at the church, before you start blaming me for stuff for which you have no idea.
So this is the question. He's not a part of that organization. So if you're a journalist and you're not a part of the organization that you're covering that's protesting, are you still held to the same standard? And that's what the legal question, I would say, would be. Are you still bound by the same standard as the protesters if you are there as a journalist? And I think this is the question people want to have. Listen, there are a number of us that report things on the ground. I've been on the ground. I've covered protests. I've covered, I've covered speeches. I've covered rallies on the ground. Status Quo covers everything on the ground. Like if you look at Status Quo's channel, they've been covering all of these protests on the ground. Midas Touch also working along with them as well, covering things on the ground. So if this becomes the case that even as a journalist, you can't do this because of the rules that apply to the protesters, that really does change things, right? Now, I want to get to another part here, which I thought was interesting. The Assistant Attorney General was also on Glenn Beck's show. And I want you to hear what she said here. Listen to the question that he asked her.
If he was in violation, unless he was part of it, do you go after the journalist that's reporting it? Or do you view him as something that was not just reporting it?
Okay, well, I'm going to reserve comment on that specific fact pattern, but let's just take a hypothetical, okay? A hypothetical where a podcaster, once a news anchor, is deciding that he's learning of a crime in progress. It's a bank robbery, okay? And he's friends with the bank robbers and he sympathizes with them because he agrees with what they're going to spend the money on. So the bank robbers call him because they'd like some PR because they think what they're doing is great, whatever. And you decide to go along and you know that the group of people you're with are breaking into a building and they're going to commit a crime inside and then you're going to stream it inside. That fact pattern is much more dubious than how you put it. And so I think we're investigating our facts. Mr. Lemon has put several hours of video on the internet yesterday saying a variety of things. And I would, if I were his lawyer, I would probably say, that maybe you should lawyer up before you do things like this.
So I'm putting this out there for everybody to hear because you see what's happening now, right? So Glenn Beck said, but does basically what I was asking, like, well, if he's there as a journalist, does that mean the same thing? So everybody needs to pay attention to what is happening here. She also said that he posted videos about this. So they're trying to say that he was inciting violence. But the thing is, that tells you that they're watching. That tells you that these people are watching YouTube media. They're seeing what's out there. Now, I say it again, somebody's watching me. So they're watching. You may never know it, but they're looking to see what's being said so they can figure out a way to counter it. Now, I want to get into this part here because this is where it gets kind of funny. Don Lemon has been going on a number of shows, I guess, to respond to this as well. And he had a hell of a response for Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj responded in this way. Don cock-sucking Lemon is disgusting. How dare you? I want that thug in jail. He would never do that to any other religion. Lock him up. So you know what's interesting? She's one to talk. She's one to talk. You guys know Nicki Minaj. She go wherever the opportunity is. She's an opportunist. Her music career been on the downward spiral, so she had to find a way to remain relevant once again. And that's why she joins alongside with Turning Point USA and all that stuff to create that commotion. And then her sales go up. And, she's not the queen bee in the rap industry anymore. Her big glory days come and then they went away. It happens to everybody. Right? So, what was weird to me about this statement coming from her? There is a large portion of the LGBT community that supported Nicki Minaj. Nicki Minaj, that's something she was known for, loving the LGBT community. That was like her thing. But you see how You see how she treats you, right? Anything to remain relevant. That's Nicki Minaj. 2, it's interesting that she says, I want that thug in jail. People could say that about her husband. People could say that about her brother. They're not in jail. The Hubs isn't in jail anymore. And I really believe, and I said this, that this is why she's hanging around the Trump administration like that, because she's trying to get some type of pardon. 3, Nicki Minaj herself did not come to the U.S. legally. It's not a secret. And I don't know why all of a sudden people are pretending like this is not a thing. So under the policies right now, under the Trump administration, Nicki Minaj would also be deported. And I believe that's part of the reason why she made this shift. She's looking out for herself. So for all the people who are clapping their hands and applauding Nicki Minaj, she don't care about you. She's going to try to get what she can get from the Trump administration. A couple years from now, she'll turn again. Whatever benefits her pocket. So Don Lemon did clap back at Nicki Minaj. And I thought this is funny. I've never seen him say this before, but Don Lemon said that Nicki Minaj is not a Black American. Listen to this.
Minaj is not a Christian. She knows nothing about a Christian. What she is a grifter. And instead of that Chucky doll, she should have had a pick-me doll on there, because Nicki Minaj is a pick-me. And she's not African American. I think she's from the islands. She is a Black woman, but she doesn't understand the African American struggle, so to speak. And if she did,
Oh, no. I was shocked that he said that. I was shocked it came from him. Because that now Don Lemon, oh my God. It's funny because when people said that about Kamala, Don Lemon was one of the people who defended it. But now Don Lemon has become a little bit more bolder, and he's saying that Nicki Minaj is not African American, not a Black American. What is happening? We are living in the Twilight Zone. I'm so sorry, guys.
American struggle, so to speak. And if she did, she wouldn't be doing this and saying this on Martin Luther King Day, on the Martin Luther King holiday of all days, putting that out. Nicki Minaj doesn't care about Black people. She doesn't care about gay people. Those are 2 of her biggest supporters and the people who make her rich. And if I was, as I should say, if I am, as a Black and gay person, I'm not supporting her. And so if you're Black and you hear what Nicki Minaj is doing, and she's sitting on the stage with Charlie Kirk's widow, who Charlie Kirk, sadly, who should not have died. You have to, say that caveat the way that he did. It was uncalled for. However, he talked shit about Black people a lot. He said racist, bigoted things a lot. And she's cozying up to his wife and to his organization and to all of the other bigots in the MAGA movement. And now she is calling a gay man a cocksucker. Mm-hmm. That's homophobia. So if we were in the day where we bought records, I would be burning Nicki Minaj's records today. So I am so glad that I've never been a Nicki Minaj fan. I don't know her music. There's nothing on my playlist that's ever Nicki Minaj. And there isn't going to be, because she is an ignorant pick-me, and I choose not to pick her.
I don't know what to say. I was shocked that he said that. So it sounds like even Don Lemon is choosing to delineate. It's funny. Oh my God. Now, here's the kicker here, folks. To wrap all of this up, look at what the Minnesota Police Department is doing now. Even they are starting to change position. Listen to this. This is crazy. This is wild.
As the last 2 weeks, we as law enforcement community have been receiving endless complaints about civil rights violations in our streets from U.S. citizens. What we're hearing is they're being stopped in traffic stops or on the street with no cause and being forced to demand paperwork to determine if they are here legally. As this went on over the past 2 weeks, we started hearing from our police officers the same complaints as they fell victim to this while off duty. Every one of these individuals is a person of color who has had this happen to them. In Brooklyn Park, one particular officer that shared her story with me was stopped as she passed ICE going down the roadway. When they boxed her in, they demanded her paperwork, of which she's a U.S. citizen and clearly would not have any paperwork. When she became concerned about the rhetoric and the way she was being treated, she pulled out her phone. In an attempt to record the incident, the phone was knocked out of her hands, prevented her from recording it. The officer had their guns drawn during this interaction. And after the officer became so concerned, they were forced to identify themselves as a Brooklyn Park police officer in hopes of slowing the incident and de-escalating the incident down.
So the Minneapolis, the police department here, Minnesota police, they are saying that an ICE agent pointed their gun at a police officer. And it's interesting, it's coming from them that this escalation, they're like, oh, this is escalated too much, because we all remember some of the things that they did during the George Floyd protests. So you guys, all of them are trained. Listen, the police and and ICE, they're all practicing IDF practices. Police are trained by the IDF. ICE is trained by the IDF. So, it's like, it's just interesting that it's coming from them, of all people. But this is where we're at now. So do I think the DOJ is really going to have anything against Don Lemon? Probably not. However, the way that they are moving, one has to be very careful. I will also reach out to, Jordan's usually pretty careful, but I will reach out to Status Quo as well, just to tell them be very careful, because again, like, they did pass that rule that you cannot go to a place of worship and protest inside a place of worship. And as a journalist, if you're following them to cover a story, are you held by the same rule? So I think this is something people need to pay attention to. But interesting that they are going after him and not the others who were there. Somebody is watching me. Let's go to some of the comments, ladies and gents. AAA. Thank you, What Democracy. Great to see you in JP last Friday. Sabby removed is so good. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming. That was a great one. I'm going to have another screening in February. Mighty says, I was shocked Don Lemon was in the streets for real. He was on the ground before the 2024 presidential election, too. He was interviewing people on the ground then. Thank you, Dr. Umar. Dr. Umar is a Pookie. Jail or prison is a vacation for Don Lemon. Thank you, Nat. I think DD cleared up that isn't the ICE pastor. Okay. Skylar said Don Lemon was finally becoming more of his authentic self. We saw pieces of it at CNN, and that's why they got rid of him. For all his previous nonsense, I appreciate authentic Don more. Carl said Denver started QB injured, New England chance to win improved. Well, I'll just cross my fingers. Thank you, Dr. Harden. Or Dre Harden. I always want to say Dr. Harden. So he admits Kamala isn't black. Thank you, Star. I'm originally from Trinidad, and pygmy is fighting words for Trini women. Interesting. Thank you, Courtney. Actually, Nikki is a naturalized citizen, so she can't be deported. Interesting. And thank you, Dre. Sabby and Whitney for 2028. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's get that comment there on Rumble. Thank you. All right. Thank you, RB Ham. In my opinion, the church incident was a classic psyop led by undercover feds to make the protesters look bad. Lemon was in on it because he wants to regain relevance. They want chaos to crack down on. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Let's go to that next story. Okay. Before I get into this next story, again, we don't know if this is true. It is alleged. I'm going to say it again, alleged. Allegedly, a male accuser has come forward in this Jeffrey Epstein debacle. Allegedly, his name is Sasha Riley. Now, this isn't new, but it is out and about, going viral on social media. And I had to look into it a little bit only to find out that this person has been saying this for quite some time. So it's not someone who just came forward today. I want to be very clear about that. But this is the first time that I am seeing that there's a male who is accusing Epstein and others, we'll get to the names, in this Epstein debacle. Now, some are even wondering if Sasha Riley is a real person. Let's walk through this together, ladies and gents. This was shared by Boston Smalls. There's a link I'll put in the comments. It's a link to a Substack of a supposed victim of Trump Epstein ring, allegedly. Sasha Riley claims he was abused by Trump, Epstein, Lindsey Graham, Andy Biggs, and Clarence Thomas. The alleged abuse allegedly happened when he was between 11 and 14 years old. It's all audio recording of his testimony, and he goes into great detail. Sasha Riley went on to become an Iraq War veteran. So here's the picture that is shared here. And I'm not sure if everyone has even heard of him before, because I just heard about this just recently. So let's walk through this together. Yeah, a male, right? Yeah. Let's go on a little bit more here. This woman kind of does a backstory about this, about who his adopted dad was, and gives the backstory. And then I'm going to show you his account and some of the things that he shared as well. And you're going to hear that audio recording. So shout out to her, because I thought she did a pretty good job summarizing this. Let's get into it.
Sasha was born in 1973. Birth name was Manuel Sasha Barros. He was adopted when he was 4 into what he says was a trafficking network. The man that adopted him was a pilot. His name is William Kyle Riley.
We will show you this as well from his social media account about the adopted dad.
Okay, and that is the man that raised Sasha Riley. William Kyle Riley, again, that's the father. He was a pilot, and his family has very well documented ties to the Dixie Mafia, which has a long history of crime and trafficking. So we'll just leave that there. The adoption took place in Ranger, Georgia, which from everything that I can find is where the father still lived. Again, I'm not going to go over the specifics. It's worth stating that there are a lot of allegations that he was part of these parties that were happening and that there was a lot of SA and things that shouldn't have been happening. So around the age of 18, he joins the U.S. Army, serves honorably, earns decorations, and somewhere around 2008 at Fort Carson, a fellow soldier was caught with child porn on his laptop. And some of that material included videos of Sasha Riley.
So did everybody hear that? So Sasha Riley is alleging that he was in some of these videos. Now, we have all heard some stories. And again, this is someone who was willing to testify. I'm starting to wonder some things. Again, we don't know. We don't know if this is 100% true or not. So I have to say allegedly. But if he offered to testify, why wasn't he allowed to testify? I also don't remember seeing him present with any of the other Epstein victims when they came forward with Marjorie Taylor Greene, with Ro Khanna, and with Thomas Massie. And part of me wonders if there are some that maybe just haven't been vetted, and so they have not been included, or if there are some that they just don't want included because they can't confirm their story. I don't know. But that's why I thought this was new, until I look further and realize, no, they've been claiming this for years. So how is it that this person was overlooked? And I'm wondering, is it because he's a male?
So the people in command brought it to his attention and asked him, is this you? And he said, yes, it is. It's important to say that even all the way back then, that was almost 20 years ago, those people were aware that these were children in a child film. If you've made it this far in the video, please put the words "we want the truth" in the comment section, like, repost, and follow for updates. In February 2023, Sasha starts to speak out. Major, just little posts on Twitter. He referenced Epstein, he references the parties, he named names. He didn't have a big following, so it doesn't go viral, but it's there. That's the point, okay? It's documented, it's consistent.
I have to pause here because another thing that stood out to me is that he named names. And with some of the other accusers, we haven't heard any names. So it is interesting to me that he named names. Let's continue on.
That because there's a lot of talk that he came out of nowhere to affect the 2026 midterm. No, he's been talking about this for quite some time now. And I think it's important to say that he has been as transparent as Saran Wrap, posting everything to include his adoption records, all the contacts that he's had. We'll get into more of that in a second. And for 2 years while he was doing this, nobody reached out to him, no law enforcement, and he repeatedly said that he was willing to testify under oath. And he was basically calling out the systemic failures about statute of limitations, that there was this huge system of people who were basically covering it up. And still no response until the summer of 2025. After Epstein-related documents surfaces, the FBI reaches out to Sasha Riley. Of course, he responds immediately, providing records, notebooks, testimony. For the first time in his life, there's someone in an official capacity who's listening. But of course, no investigation followed. So in September of 2025, Sasha proactively reaches out to Democratic aides on the House Oversight Committee. He travels to DC. He handed over both physical and digital evidence. He offered a polygraph. He offered sworn testimony. And then he did something that most survivors could not probably ever stomach doing. He sat down and he recorded a 4-hour interview with journalist Lisa Noel Volding. Calm, detailed, consistent. It's released publicly. No monetization gimmick, no hiding behind a paywall, no anonymity.
Right. There's no charge. Anybody can listen to it. And that's another thing. Also, if this is true that he provided all of that evidence, why wasn't it looked into? Why wasn't there an investigation? Like what happened there? It's just really weird to me that someone who said they were willing to testify and they said, here's the evidence that I have, allegedly, that there was no investigation into this. And one of the names that was mentioned was Clarence Thomas. Now, let's all remember, back in the day, there was a woman by the name of Anita Hill. Anita Hill testified in the Senate. Joe Biden was one of those people who was on the Senate. We got to go back to all this because I'm just trying to show you a pattern. Anita Hill testified, and she said that Clarence Thomas should not be sworn in as a Supreme Court justice because Clarence Thomas sexually harassed her. Here's the kicker. Anita Hill had actual evidence and witnesses. However, her witnesses were not allowed to testify. Do you know why? Because Joe Biden, who was the chair on that committee at that point in time, would not allow her witnesses to testify. Clarence Thomas was sworn in. Of course, more recently, when Joe Biden decided to run for president, he contacted Anita Hill to apologize. What's that all about? So I'm trying to show you a pattern that she had evidence and it was just dismissed. Nothing to see over here, folks. Clarence Thomas still sits on the Supreme Court. Now, we have Sasha Riley here, who listed Clarence Thomas as one of the people. Let's go on more.
Just here's my story. Verify it. Then in November 2025, the Epstein files, some of them were released, thousands of pages. And Sasha points out the overlaps between those documents and his story. Logs, pilots, still no direct acknowledgement. Then in early January 2026, just a few days ago, his story begins to explode online. Tens of thousands of engagements. And then he met with Oklahoma law enforcement. He named names and he posted the contacts of the people that he met with publicly. He told them, release the records publicly for the survivors. And as of today, he has left the United States for safety reasons, which I'm sure I don't need to enumerate for you. But he is standing in the open saying, test me, verify me, put me under oath. Goes with this. I know that there are a lot of people questioning the veracity of this story, and that's fair. There are a lot of atrocious things talked about in those interviews, but I think it's more important to focus on the touch points, right? Because until you get some kind of documented credibility, which can only be verified by the timeline and the touch points that can be verified, legal records, police reports, etc., until that happens, it's all speculation. And
yeah, that's important. I'm glad she did say that. Again, allegedly, we don't know for certain. So I'm glad she's protecting herself by saying that there. But I do want to show you a couple of things about this. So I did go to Sasha Barros' X profile here. And what I noticed is that he has not posted on this site for quite some time. I'll show you in just a second. For this account, joined in 2020. But what I noticed when I went to the media, I said, let me look at the media. I mean, looks like a real person to me, don't you think? Looks like a real person. The part that I want to show you, one of them is this one. This picture. Now, I don't know why I can't show you the side part here. I can't see his comment for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, this was his adopted father there. And then he also shared, let me see if I can pull it up here. There's that document. Just got to scroll down. Here it is. Right here. This was the document. It says in the Chauncey Court for Green. So this was his adoption papers to show you that that was his adopted father. It's tiny. I know you guys can't see it, but it says William K. Riley and wife. And here's his name here versus Manuel Joseph Barros. So I don't know why I can't see the comment here. Oh, maybe if I just go here. Here it is. Here's my adoption papers. My POS adoptive father's name is William Kyle Riley, lives on Redbud Road, Ranger, Georgia. One of the, we'll say videos, because YouTube, that they made me do is called Betty Davis Eyes. It's online. My old Army buddies used to give me a hard time about it. Let me pull this out here. Let's come back to the other one now that I can see the comments. There was another one here. This picture I was showing you. He said, I was adopted. My adoption papers are in the media. My dad, William Kyle Riley, pictured below, adopted me to abuse. I was abused physically, sexually, and emotionally by both him and his wives, one of whom, Lynn Riley, killed herself, allegedly killed herself when I started talking about it. So if you look at that profile now, though, scroll back up here. If we go to posts, The last post was made in 2023. So no longer active, at least on that account there. This is the account here that's telling everybody another one. People are saying, who is Sasha Riley and why is the alleged Epstein survivor's testimony audio going viral? Yeah, that's what I was saying. Like all of a sudden, this was like trending, and I'm like, okay, where did this come from, right? And Sasha Baron, I would imagine, probably like to that point left the country because somebody was watching him. You know, we're talking about somebody's watching me is the theme. Someone was watching him. Now, I can play a little bit of the audio. I can't play all of it, obviously, but I'm going to play a little bit of the audio here so that you guys can hear some of the things that he said. Here we go. Maybe I'll put the captions up for you guys too.
But I can tell you that some of them are extraordinarily horrible. I can give you one instance where they were filming us. It was me and a girl that I knew that I had been trafficked with in other venues. And while we were filming, they came in and shot her in the head. So killed her, obviously. So that would be...
Was that the runaway?
That was another girl, and I can't even remember her name. Yeah. The runaway was tortured to death in a duplex in Enterprise, Alabama.
So that's one of the things that is alleged. And again, this is an audio. It's not a video of this person saying this. So again, we always have to say, you know, allegedly. We don't know. Like I said, like Sasha Riley's claims are not included with the other Epstein victims. And that is something that people are pointing out is, okay, that's a red flag. Why wasn't he included to be a part of that as well? But then there's also the claim that he said he was willing to testify and that there was no investigation that was, you know, led into this after he supposedly brought forward evidence. So I don't know. But one thing I'll show you here, if we go back a little bit and just pull this up here. I wanted to show you the names. If I remove the captions here so you can see it. Yeah, it said he's named names and these accounts have been given to Democrat Oversight Committee. So here are the names that were named: Donald Trump, Lindsey Graham, Clarence Thomas, Andy Biggs, and Jim Jordan. Now, Jim Jordan, I don't know if everybody knows this. Remember, Jim Jordan was accused of covering up the assaults that took place in Ohio. Does everybody remember he's a trainer or a medical doctor? Everyone remember the guy, he's in jail now. Remember that the guy who was with the gymnast? And the gymnast came forward years later and said that he was abusive towards them and stuff like that. Well, you know, a similar situation that was happening in Ohio. And people said that Jim Jordan knew about it and did nothing about it. So I don't know. Allegedly, Larry Nassar. Yeah, Larry Nassar. Thank you so much for that, Eric. That was the guy who was the gymnast doctor. So it's interesting that his name is mentioned here. Now, because no one can physically see Sasha, because we have these pictures, you know, but nobody is talking to him face to face, it seems like. There's no interview with him face to face, at least as of recent. So people are saying they do not know if this is true or if he is telling the truth. I honestly don't know. But I do find it interesting that even though he put this information out there a couple of years ago, why is it all of a sudden people are learning about it now? And that, I think, makes me wonder. You know, all the Epstein talk that we've been discussing on the show about the underage girls and the way that they were treated. You know, I think I made a mistake by not also mentioning that this happens to males too. It doesn't just happen to underage girls. It also happens to underage boys. And for whatever reason, it seems like to me, when these things do happen to males, it doesn't seem to be looked at the same way as when it happens to a female. And the way that I see it is that abuse is abuse, and it's wrong. It doesn't matter to me if it's a female or a male. And I also feel like this could be part of the reason why you're less likely to see any SA victim come forward, but you're even more less likely to see a male SA victim come forward. I think this is part of the reason. So I don't know, you guys. This one's very, very interesting. And I think that, let me see if I can show this other part. So he alleged that one of the other people that was with him, which was the runaway, he alleges that she was shot in the head. I think we can play this part. We can't play the whole thing.
File ring, different layers of parties.
Yeah, but it's a whole bunch of people. It's just that from my childhood perspective, what I saw, or what I thought that I saw, was he was the big boss. Donald Trump was the big boss, and then Epstein was like you said, like the manager or something. And then you had lower level people like my dad that kind of went out and found girls or coordinated, at the ground level of things.
Yeah. So in terms of
even Epstein himself, he just sought out people like my dad that would sell, their adopted child, their actual child, or whatever. So those are the different layers of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, because we can't see him, you know what I mean? You can't see him. You don't know for sure. I'm curious what Whitney Webb thinks about this, if she's looked into this one as well. We just don't know. But I did think it was important to share this with you guys, the possibility that a male could also be involved. And here's the other thing. Here's why you're not getting to the bottom of this as well. I wanted you to hear what Pam Bondi just said at the Israeli American Council recently. And I'm going to show you what Miriam Adelson said as well. Listen to this.
I want to tell you a story right here in Florida. You probably heard of it. It's not a crime of great violence, but in my opinion, it's a crime of great significance. I give college presidents my personal cell phone, and I say, if you need anything, call me. My phone rang one day. I was sitting in the office, and it was the president of Florida State University. And he said, something just happened. Yeah, a young woman, a student, threw her phone, cursed, attacked a young student, a young man, male student, who was playing basketball because he was wearing an IDF shirt. She was a student, he was a student. I spent the next few hours on the phone. I called my U.S. attorney, I called the state attorney, called law enforcement, and I guess she went through the system as it should, and she now is kicked out of Florida State University.
So you don't see the DOJ really diving into these Epstein files because their priority is Israel first. Pam Bondi's priority is Israel first. By the way, you never see them fight like this for any other group of people. None. You don't see it happen. Miriam Adelson goes on to confirm this at this same event, the Israeli American Council. See it for yourself.
Under her leadership, the Department of Justice has made combating anti-Semitism a top priority, especially in response to the alarming rise in incidents following October 7.
So Miriam Adelson just confirmed that the DOJ's top priority is combating anti-Semitism, not locking up Epstein's buddies, not finding justice for Epstein survivors, Not any of that. Not trying to track down serial killers, not any of those types of things. The number one priority for the DOJ, according to Miriam Adelson, is Israel. And if the number one priority for the DOJ is Israel, and we all know that thanks to Virginia Giuffre and her book, that Barak was one of the people she alleged that abused her, was one of those perpetrators, then you got your answer. They're not going to go into the Epstein files the way that they should, not just because there's billionaires and rich people that are tangled in there, as Donald Trump said, his friends, but also because there's Israelis that are also mentioned. Barak was a prime minister. So there you go, ladies and gents. We'll have to wait and see if any more information is revealed about the Sasha Riley, because I don't know. Like I told you guys, I really don't know. I don't want to sit here and say, yes, this is 100%, because I don't know if that's 100%, but I do find it rather interesting. And it also makes me wonder if it's possible that there may have been other male victims who are just too ashamed, not just afraid, but ashamed to come forward. Let's go to some of the comments. Oh, Eric said he's going to get those. Oh, I think Eric said he was going to get those. Measured Man, thank you. Do you know Nassar and this guy is connected to Les Wexner? He resigned from Ohio board after this. Well, there you go. See, one big party, one big club. There you go, guys. Can we go to the next part, Eric, for Type VNC? Thank you. If you guys haven't done so, please smash the like button. Thank you. If you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share like a Care Bear. And we're moving on and grooving on, ladies and gents. Okay, let's get to this Whitney Webb story here. So we were warned. We were warned by Whitney Webb. She warned me in 2023. In 2024 and in 2025. And it's finally here. Palantir has decided, of course, to expand. They are building a pre-crime app. This is the Minority Report that I was afraid of finally coming to the surface. Check this out. Elite is a surveillance system that maps real individuals across the U.S. and assigns a confidence score. This allows ICE to identify target-rich areas. But what Whitney Webb warned us about, and I'll show you, is that it does not end with ICE. We are really looking at a real-life version of Minority Report. Let's go ahead and get into this here. Palantir surveillance.
We now have information on the app that ICE uses to determine which neighborhoods to raid. It's called Elite, and in a testimony obtained by 404 Media, it's been revealed that it looks like Google Maps with pins for all the potential deportation targets. And interestingly, the targets include confidence scores, scores that indicate how likely they are to be at a potential location. ICE agents then drive to a location that's target-rich and knock out waves of arrests. Now, Palantir is the company that is officially behind this technology. In case you didn't know, Palantir was tasked by the Trump administration to create a master database on every single person in the US.
And we also know that Palantir is also attached to Peter Thiel, and also Peter Thiel is attached to JD Vance, a creation of JD Vance. So I'm saying this because Donald Trump, no, obviously he can't be president again come 2028. That won't stop him from trying. But the reality is, for people who think that JD Vance is going to be even more lenient because he's not as vocal with some of his schemes as Donald Trump, you are in for a big, rude awakening. And I would say The one you really need to watch out for is the one who appears to be a lot more calm. JD Vance appears to be a lot more calm, but that doesn't mean that he won't be just as conniving, if not worse.
Citizens and non-citizens alike, all of us officially have scores around how likely we are to be a potential threat. In the land of the free, every move, our social media behavior, and our location are all being monitored. In case you're unfamiliar with the rest of Palantir's work, they're actually the ones responsible for testing out their kill technology and perfecting it on civilians in Palestine. Their main product is an AI platform designed to identify and eliminate potential future threats. That technology is now right here at home on the streets in the US.
Yeah. Now, again, we were warned, right? And so for some people that didn't see these interviews by Whitney, maybe they, weren't aware of this, that this was coming up. But, there's a reason why they don't allow Whitney Webb to come onto corporate media, right? Because they don't want you to hear these types of things. Here's the kicker, though. Remember when I told you that the Trump administration usually takes something that was implemented under the Biden administration and expands on it? No difference here. Everyone pay attention. This was reported by The Guardian 4 months ago. ICE obtains access to Israeli-made spyware that can hack phones and encrypted apps. So this is all connected. Rather, whatever your position is on immigration, you need to put that aside for just a second. ICE, Israel, surveillance, all of this is connected. Trump administration contract with Paragon Solutions gives immigration agency access to one of the more powerful stealth cyber weapons. Let's get into this one here. U.S. immigration agents will have access to one of the world's most sophisticated hacking tools after a decision made by the Trump administration to move ahead with a contract with Paragon Solutions, a company founded in Israel which makes spyware that can be used to hack into any mobile phone, including encrypted applications. So that's any mobile phone, not just the mobile phones of those that ICE agents are looking for. That includes our mobile phones as well. Now it goes on to say here, this is the kicker. The Department of Homeland Security first entered into a contract with Paragon, now owned by a U.S. firm, in late 2024 under the Biden administration. But the $2 million contract was put on hold pending a compliance review to make sure it adhered to an executive order that restricts U.S. government's use of spyware, Wired reported at the time. So does everybody see what I was talking about? The Biden administration entered into this contract first. And so the Trump administration is expanding on it. Now, look, I talk a lot of shit about Trump. I also talked a lot of shit about Biden too, for those who are new. I believe we deserve better as a people. But for those who are calling out Trump and his actions with ICE, but you didn't call out Biden when they increased funding to ICE under his administration, or you didn't call out Biden for this, I'm kind of looking at you with a side eye, man. Because that to me tells me to you it's partisan instead of focusing on the issue. Both of these parties agree with surveillance and the surveillance state. And both of these parties have entered into contracts to do just that. Now we'll go to another part here that I want to show you as well. Now, Whitney came out and told us this last year, and I should probably try to get Whitney back on. I'm curious what she thinks about everything that's happening right now. For those who are not aware, Whitney Webb is an independent journalist. She is the author of One Nation Under Blackmail. She was the first one that I saw really dive into the whole Epstein, saga. She has 2 books about this, volume 1 and volume 2. Many of the people that you see named that was released in these Epstein files now, Whitney Webb had already mentioned these people, some of them in her books. So you can find those books, I think, on Amazon, volume 1 and volume 2, if you want to read those. So check that out. But a shout out to Sense Receptor, who posted this recently, and that reminded me, oh shit, here we go. Whitney Webb in August of 2025. And this is what she said when she came on last year.
And Trump has been openly building databases on people with Palantir. Of course, most people know that they're doing that with ICE, but the administration announced not that long ago that they're doing it for everybody. And Palantir also manages all of your health.
Let's go back. Listen to this.
Trump has been openly building databases on people with Palantir. Of course, most people know that they're doing that with ICE, but the administration announced not that long ago that they're doing it for everybody.
They're doing it for everybody. They're not just going to surveil people that they want to deport. They're going to surveil all of us. All of us. Sometimes I miss the days before smartphones. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I wish I could go back to the days when we did not have smartphones and I didn't have apps on my phones. And the only time I was on Facebook is when I logged into Facebook on my computer. Sometimes I really do miss those days. Let's go on.
And Palantir also manages all of your health data because they contract extensively with HHS. So, this is very concerning for a lot of reasons. One point on that I would point to is how Trump in his first term, there was the spate of mass shootings, I believe, in the latter half of 2019. And Trump called on social media companies to stop shooters before they commit a crime, and to basically flag what people were saying on social media and use that to determine if if there should be intervention before a crime might be committed.
Okay, pause right here. We're going to come back to this because let's go to what just happened with social media to a young woman in Miami. So I just want to show you this playing out in real freaking time. Shout out to Clint Russell, who shared this. This lady in Miami had the FBI knock on her door simply because she pointed out the hypocrisy of Randy Fine. Watch this.
Picture to make sure it's you. We're not sure.
Okay.
Is that your account?
I refuse to answer questions without my lawyer present. So I really don't know how to answer that question either.
Well, like I said, you're not
this
going
is
to jail.
freedom of speech. This is America, right?
And
Veteran.
all right. And I agree with you 100%.
All right.
We're just trying to see if it's you, because if we're not talking to the right person, we want to go see who the right person
Okay,
is.
how can I help you?
So pretty much it's just a statement that was made as far as,
verbatim, it says the guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians tried to shut down a theater for showing a movie that hurt his feelings and refuses to stand up for the LGBTQ community in any way. Even leaves the room when they vote and on related matters. Wants you to know that you're all welcome. Clown face, clown face, clown face.
So he's reading a social media post that she made about Randy Fine. This is what Randy Fine said, right? So in 2023, he said, make a secret trip to Jerusalem to deliver Ron DeSantis HB 269, the strongest anti-Semitism bill in the U.S. The Florida's Nazi thugs, I have news, attack Jews on their property and you're going to prison. Never again means never again. So the feds came to this woman's house because she tweeted something or posted something about Randy Fine, basically calling him a hypocrite. So this is now a questionable offense. They're doing it in real time, guys.
You don't know if it was you?
I'm not going to answer whether that's me or not.
Okay.
The concerning part, and not concerning for the person who's posting it, well, we're just trying to prevent somebody else getting agitated or agreeing with the statement. We're not saying it's true or not.
Understood.
that guy who consistently calls for the death of all Palestinians, that can probably incite somebody to do something radical. That's all we're here to talk about. And we wanted to get your side. If it was you that posted that, I would think to refrain from posting things like that, because that could get something incited.
I appreciate your concern.
But Randy Fine literally does do that. He does call for the death of all Palestinians on social media. So that's what they approached her about. This is crazy.
And I appreciate you coming out here.
Okay,
that's it.
That is it.
Okay.
I'm going to maintain my my amendment rights to not answer the question about what. I hope
thank
that's
you for your time.
understandable.
We appreciate it.
Thank you
Yeah,
as well.
appreciate it. Okay.
You as well. Thank you. Take care.
You don't have.
But it's been happening. It's been happening.
Have the right to harm other people with your words, and you don't have the right to say things that have really negative, really horrible meanings. When you want people to destroy Israel, that matters.
See? So everybody sees, right? All right, let's go back to the video with Whitney, because I just wanted you guys to see that like playing out in real time.
Basically.
That's Minority Report.
Actually, William Barr, when he was in office the first time, created this program that legalized pre-crime in the United States. And I think I was like one of two people maybe that reported on that at the time. It was called DEEP, and there's been a few arrests under DEEP for people making Facebook posts and things like that. But not that many, but the legal framework has been there since, Trump round one, basically. But anyway, this pitch that Trump made about having social media spy on its users and use like analytics to, bring about some sort of pre-crime society. He was being pitched at the time, and he was interested in it, but it didn't ultimately happen. In creating this agency called HARPA, which was supposed to be like the health version of the Pentagon's DARPA. And the program that they wanted to start with, the acronym was Safe Homes, and it was basically about analyzing American social media posts for early warning signs of neuropsychiatric violence, and then based on that, would either send people to a court-ordered psychologist or physician, or even house arrest without them having committed any crime. So now that we have big tech even more intertwined with Trump round two, people should really be paying attention to the stuff, especially now that Palantir, especially through the DOJ, formerly led by Elon Musk agency, has sort of embedded Palantir in even more aspects of the government than it was in before, including like the IRS and, mortgage stuff like Fannie Mae and all of that,
Remember when I told you guys that it was announced recently that the IRS was looking at people's bank accounts? So our privacy is just floating like out the window. And I think this is where I agree with libertarians. I believe libertarians agree with the right to privacy. I believe we should have a right to privacy. But our government is just continuing to try to take that away from us. Pay attention to what is happening. They're trying to take away our speech, trying to take away the right to protest, or what type of protest you can have, even if it's a peaceful protest. They're trying to take away your privacy. I mean, what's the First Amendment for now?
I'll have Palantir now, and then basically giving them the keys to the kingdom with a lot of data that the Department of Treasury has about your finances in the IRS and all of that. All of this is going to go into this master database, and the goal of Palantir, just like it was with total information awareness, is about stopping crime before it happens. It's pre-crime, and Palantir did that for a few years, several years, in police departments around the country, piloting predictive policing programs, which is pre-crime, and mainly low-income minority neighborhoods, starting off in New Orleans.
So there you go, folks. So if you have not seen the movie Minority Report, you probably could be able to watch it on YouTube for free now, because it's been a long time. But Minority Report stars Tom Cruise. That's essentially what that is, where people are arrested for crimes that it is predicted they would make, not that they made. And it's a scary, scary time. You know, I've watched every Black Mirror episode, and I have to tell you, I see it more and more and more, right? Whether it was the episode with the robot dogs, which we do have, by the way, whether it's the episode where everything that you get, your social credit score in life is based on how many likes you get online. That's really scary. But I could see a lot of these things happening. I don't know if you guys have all seen Black Mirror. If you haven't, it's an excellent show. I recommend that you watch it. And it's about technology and where we could be headed as a society. So this is scary. This is alarming. And I'm trying to tell all you guys, it's going to come a point where these parties are not going to matter, where we're all going to have to make a decision. Are we going to come together as a people to push back against these powers that be, or are we going to continue to be divided because of these political parties? When we have the 0.01%, and you have, don't forget, all the intelligence is going to go to Israel. We talked about this. And you'll have Israeli intelligence, the tech bros, and AI, all of that coming down against us. I would sincerely hope that at that point, people would realize this is not about a Republican team or a Democrat team. This is about survival. And this is about rights, the right to privacy, the right to free speech, the right to expression, whether you agree with what is expressed or what is said or not. Because the last thing I want is to have those rights taken away for anyone. We don't want a controlled state. And I really do feel like that's what they're trying to do.
And now you have other companies besides Palantir that do this. There's one in LA called Predpol, and they have an accuracy of 0.5%. And they haven't gotten rid of the contract.
So there you go.
So it's not really about better, more efficient policing. I mean, that's what it's going to be sold as. It's basically the idea that was developed, by the British for prison designs in the 1800s, the panopticon, the idea that if people feel like they're constantly under watch and they could, be, obviously out of the prison context, you could be put in prison for doing the wrong thing or whatever, then people will police themselves. If they know they're under constant watch, they will police themselves, they will censor themselves, things of that nature. And I think ultimately that's the form of control it is about.
And that reminds me of the Black Mirror episode that I was telling you about, where everything is based on how many likes you get online. Like if you post a picture, however many people like it, that determines. It's like, one second. I don't know why I can't remember the name of that episode, but I used to call it the Facebook episode. It's in the first season of Black Mirror. And basically the way it works is like, if you, thank you, Eric, Nosedive. It's the episode called Nosedive. And basically the way that it would work is that, let's say you want to rent an apartment. Well, depending on what your social credit score is, that determines what apartment you can rent. So it's no longer a credit score based on, financial means. It's a credit score based on how likable you are and how less of a risk you may be as an individual. So if you come off as kind of cranky, or people don't like you, or someone goes in the elevator and you don't say hi to them, they can give you a thumbs down on your social credit score, and that knocks you further down. I don't want to give too much away about that episode, but it's really good. So basically, like, where you live, what you eat, what you drive, all depends on that social credit score. And so if you are considered to be a risk, which if you are lower income, you're going to be considered to be high risk, especially for Palantir as well. Palantir used technology in Gaza. And by the way, what happened in Gaza can happen anywhere. This is what I tried to tell people. What happened in Gaza can happen anywhere in the world when power is unchecked. So obviously there are going to be groups of people, especially if you're poor, you are going to be more of a target. And of course, the billionaires are not. These tools are not going to predict billionaires as being a high risk. They will be less likely to commit a crime, even though wealthy people do commit crimes. They're called white collar crimes. And actually, sometimes wealthy people have been known in the past to have people killed. But because of their wealth and because of their name, they won't be seen as high risk. And I want to show you right now, look at what's happening, right? So Hillary Clinton just said this recently about social media. Listen to this.
If the platforms, whether it's Facebook or Twitter X or Instagram or TikTok, whatever they are, if they don't moderate and monitor the content, we lose total control. And it's not just the social and psychological effects, it's real harm. If the platform...
She says it out in the open that they lose total control. Actually, she said we, and she says we, she's not talking about me and you. We know Clinton's in that high class circle as well. So they want to control the social media. Hence, this new platform that they want to launch called W that was presented at the WEF. Same thing. They want to tell you what to look at. Just like with corporate media, they want to tell you what to think. They don't want us to think outside the box. They don't want us to brainstorm. They don't want us to form our own opinions and just have free thinking. They don't want that. They want to tell us what to think, what to believe, what to do. That's it. And as long as I can remember, I think it's kind of been that way. There's a reason why certain things are not in our history textbooks. And no, you can't put everything, but the things that are left out are very telling. Because I sure as hell never saw anything about the Nakba in a history textbook. Did you? These are things to think about, the type of control that they want to have. And more particularly, they're saying it out loud here at the Israeli American Council. This is Adam Milstein. He tells the Israeli American Council, we need to gather intelligence. So here we go. I'm telling you, all these things are working together. Palantir, Israel, intelligence. Listen to this.
We need to invest in intelligence to understand who are the anti-Semites, who's funding them, what's their plans, who are the leaders. And then once we have that, we can define who is an enemy we can attack. Obviously, we're not going to go against, Islamo-leftists in the United States. It's too big. We need to define very specific organization, individuals, actions that we can fight against. And for example, when we talk about the Islamo-leftists, it's clear that Qatar is behind all that. So we need to focus on Qatar, Muslim Brotherhood, CARE in the United States. When we talk about radical left, we need to focus on the Democratic Socialists of America, which are not Democrats. They're just socialist Marxists that are using democratic means to take over the Democratic Party. Mamdani is the Democratic Socialist of America. So we need to focus on DSA. We need to focus on other radical movement, anarchist movements, People's City Council, the PP Forum, a lot of organizations that are being sponsored by China and by Marxist billionaires. And once we have all this information, we need to empower and mobilize an ecosystem of many organizations that we can incentivize them to work together, to share, and to fight against our common enemies. We need to invest in pro-Israel organizations, and we need to invest in pro-American organizations.
So everybody catch what this guy just said? So first and foremost, I'm really tired of the Qatar reference. I'm so sick of this. They say Qatar as if it's like this random country that the US doesn't work with. It does. It's basically like a US outpost, US military outpost. 2, notice he said Democratic Socialists of America, which I do want to interject here. Democratic Socialists of America are not socialists. Democratic Socialists of America basically support democratic socialism, or I guess we can also refer to it as social democracy. It's similar to what they have in Germany and Denmark and, you know, a lot of the Scandinavian countries in Europe. Those countries are still capitalist countries. I don't know why they continue to say this bullshit, but that is obviously false. So they're not actually socialists, but a lot of times they will, some of them individual members will say that they are, but that's not what the organization really is. So there's that. Of course, they had to mention Zoran Mandami. They see him as an issue because the fact that he was even able to win by running on a pro-Palestinian message. But just what he said there about the intelligence, about who they're going to go after. They mentioned CARE. CARE is not a threat. CARE is harmless. Why are they going to have to go after CARE? So Arab Americans can't have their own organizations? So this is just... And whatever they say is radical is what radical will be. They can change the definition just like they're trying to change the definition of anti-Semitism. So it's whatever they say it can be. We are living in a new era of McCarthyism. And this is why I said, don't cheer on the surveillance, because even though it's used against another group, it will also be used against you. Rockwell had a song called Somebody's Watching Me. Rockwell was right. Now, that was back in the 80s. And we didn't have social media back then. But now with social media and intelligence and AI, I don't think any of us actually have privacy. And then there are some, you know, they say they have VPNs, so they're are you though? Are you really private? I don't know. I think if people want to find you, they can. I think if these people, rich people, want to find you, they can. So this is where we're at now, folks. This is where we're at. Eric brings up a good point as well. They don't want us to have demands. They don't. They want us to just get up, go to work, live our lives. They want us to be distracted by things like the Kardashians, and they want you to watch Housewives, eat a bunch of junk food. They want you to shop. We're going to do another episode about the food too, because that's another thing I need to talk about is the food, right? All the food distractions that are right there at the register as you're about to leave the grocery store. Notice it's nothing healthy. It's just junk. They want you to shove your body full of processed foods, watch Netflix and chill, talk about the Kardashians, and shut the fuck up. That's all. That's what they want you to do. They don't want you to focus on what's happening abroad. They don't want you looking to see who's getting money from who, even though they do that. They don't want you to think. They want us to live in a bubble, just like the movie with Jim Carrey, The Truman Show. They want us to be in a Truman Show and pretend like this is what we got. We should be happy even just to be here, and we should not complain. Let's see that poll. All right. How do you feel about the World Economic Forum? We have 2,712 votes. 4% say I support it. 72% say I'm against it. 11% say what is the World Economic Forum? And 14% say I'm not sure. Okay, so most people knew what it was. That's what I was curious to see. Interesting. Professor says even Jim Carrey broke out of the artificial world. Yeah, you know, And I'm not even going to get into the whole Matrix thing. That's a call-in conversation we can have sometime. We'll do call-in a Thursday night after the show. But you know, some people ask, they're like, how do we know if this is reality? What if we are in the Matrix? Or what if I don't even know. I don't know. But I will say this, I think we deserve better, and I think we need to demand better. And I think until we do that as a collective, I think these people are just going to keep like running over us, dude. I really do. So that is it for me tonight, ladies and gents. Quick reminder, this Saturday is my mutual aid workshop. If you're interested in learning how to do mutual aid, I will see you virtually via Zoom January 24th at 11 a.m. ET. If you're signed up for my Substack, the invite will go out tomorrow, and then I'll send another invite Friday morning. That's usually how I do it. So if you want to attend that, it's 1 hour, and I try to keep it to 1 hour. If you want to learn how to do mutual aid, join that. I host it once a month, so if you can't join this time, then maybe you'll be able to join in February. But these have been going pretty great so far. So I look forward to that. All righty, folks, that is it for me tonight. I'll be live again Thursday evening, but my comrade Eric, my producer, he's going to close out the show and get to some of these super chats as well.
All right. Is this the look we do these days? Doing my crown. The problem is I can't see a thing out of them. So but the story was that he had an eye problem. So there you go. Lots of rumors. I can't see with those things.
An eye problem. Wink, wink.
But yeah, like we said, it all starts with demands. We need a movement to, to power those demands and into solutions. And we need to focus on the corruption. And the other thing is, with like the Epstein stories and these stories of abuse, until we have a real government that can do real investigations, the government's not totally corrupt, we're never going to get to the bottom of any of this. So all those dots always connect back.
Yeah, that's true. All right, guys. See ya.
All right. We're gonna let our Sabrina move on with her night. I'm gonna read out some of these chats and a few other things. Yeah, friend of the show, Firepower gets it. The old MCDS, which stands for Money Corruption Demand Solutions. Thanks for posting that. Yeah, so actually, I'm going to put in the chat here. There is a new, excuse me. All right, there's a new Substack post on the 11 Demand Substack called "We Can Do Better," and it gets into kind of this discussion of where do we go from here, and how do we get to that point of having a better world? And a lot of it comes down to the path to get there. All right, I'm going to get into the post instead of trying to. I'm sorry, I'm bringing it up here. All right, new Substack post. Dun, dun, dun. So this is from the 11 Demand Substack, which you can get to through 11demands.org. It's not hard to find, but it's called "We Can Do Better." So there's this key question in kind of leftist circles, we could say, about which of the core problems should we focus on? Whether should we be focusing on capitalism or corruption? Which should we focus on? Which should we lead with? So capitalism is certainly a core problem, and as long as it's allowed to control our economy, society, and government, things are going to keep sliding from bad to worse. We can do better than capitalism. We have to. It's a matter of survival. Calling out the faults of capitalism is always warranted and necessary, but that in and of itself is not enough. Whether we like it or not, the vast majority of Americans are not ready to support and end capitalism movement. There is, however, something that the majority will strongly support, and the corruption. This gets into figuring out the pathway to real change. And it's important to distinguish, when getting into these things, to distinguish between economy and government. One can say that a capitalist economy is inherently corrupt and nothing can be done to reform that. Fair enough. But what about government? These days, you know, the way things work these days, it's really hard to imagine, even get it into our heads, even the idea of a government that is not thoroughly corrupt and operating in the interests of the billionaires and the mega corporations, not in our interests like it's supposed to. But the key thing is, it doesn't have to be this way. And the key here is democracy, you know, real democracy. It's in one person, one vote, not the democracy of dollars that we're suffering in currently. And this is also the pathway to fixing the capitalism problem. Rather than boosting the worst abuses of immoral corporations, a decorrupted government working for that 99% would rein in the billionaires, and we get us on track toward a truly democratized economy. But how do we get there? We need to spark a movement that is based on clear demands with a strong focus on corruption. Ending the corruption is a popular message with overwhelming support from both the left and the right, whatever those are, but, you know, from both kinds of ideologies. Having a clear set of demands is crucial for keeping that kind of movement on track. So C11demands.org for the list of demands, the strategies, and more. And let's be the spark that ignites real change. And, you know, as I said here, you can find this stuff and more at 11demands.org. Here it comes. The core website for this. There's the demands, which gets into, you know, all the key parts of all this: healthcare, standard of living, economy, and the wars, racial and criminal justice reform, climate emergency. You know, censorship is a big one, especially these days. This touches on some of the stories that were talked about earlier here. Immigration reform, you know, abolish ICE. I think that one's, you know, all of a sudden gaining popularity. But the point here is to have a movement that demands things like abolish ICE before it gets to these kinds of critical levels of you know, of goons in our streets just taking down whoever they want. An election system we can trust. It's important, you know, obviously, that the elections work. Taxation and funding is huge as far as how the money works. And then democratize the enterprise gets into the future of, you know, what a real democratically run and controlled economy for the 99% would look like. So like I said, 11demands.org. That's our readout for tonight. And so to get there, it's really going to need, sorry, I'm just finding the right button. Here we are. It's going to need, the reason I call it out as a mass movement is that it's going to need people. It's going to need numbers. If we can get large numbers of people literally in the streets doing strikes, mutual aid actions, backed by a clear set of demands, something can happen, you know, some real things can happen. If we don't get those kind of numbers, then it's not going to happen. It really comes down to that. So that's why I say we all need to think about what we can do to be that kind of a spark to make something like that happen. All right. Let's see what we got for some of these queued up chats. Some of them go back, and thanks for support in the chat and kind words in general. Now, there were some ones on Rumble I wanted to hit first because some of them went back a ways, and I hadn't noticed them until now. So apologies if they're a bit late, but let's see. I'm just going to hit the right button here. There we go. And thanks much, Mark, for the paid Rumble rant. And Mark says, Sabby, when I taught in high school, my liberal boss would always push back against what I taught because he was afraid the neocons wouldn't like it. Dems are just those kinds of what Russ Dougler calls hall monitors, is what we're getting into there. And I think Mark had another one in here. Here we go. And thanks for this one also, Mark. Trying to get this one queued up right. He says, Sabby, this was an op to turn the normies against the ICE protest. I think talking about what happened in that church in Minnesota. And I know there was another one in here. We saw that one earlier. Here it comes. There are a lot of chats on Rumble tonight. Good to see. And thanks also for this Rumble rant, Mark. He says, when police are asked why they arrested that particular person, they can give a different excuse than using Palantir. Yeah, it's a thing I've heard, a version of that I've heard. I've heard it's called parallel construction, where the actual tip might come through an illegal wiretap through NSA or something like that sometimes. And they'll feed that to like the local to the local police, and then the local police will just will use that to find the crime they want, but then they'll figure out it really happened a different way. They had this lucky break. So yeah, stuff like that can happen, and we need to demand an end to it, right? And thanks also for this one, Mark, on Rumble. He says, I've been saying that the enemy sees us the same way the IDF sees Gazans. No accident that the IDF trained them. All right. Thanks for those. Get my screen set up here. And do we have any more out on the Rumble? Not at the moment. All right. And then we also had some the YouTube super chats queued up. Thanks for this one, Roger Meadows, saying Nicki Minaj is not a citizen. All right. Well, maybe we can clear that up in the next Zoom call and hangout, which we'll do on next show Thursday, I think. Thanks for the super chat. Arwin says, thank you for covering this. And thanks for this one, Measured Man, who says, did you know Nassar and this guy are connected to Les Wexner? He resigned from Ohio board after this. And thanks also for this one, Measured Man, who says, I recommend people look at 6G bill, iPods, Meta glasses, Google flipped auto smart on your emails to read what it gives them. If you don't turn it off, recommend you turn it off. And thanks, Marvin Vargas. Have Ryan Dawson on ancreport.com 9/11 Epstein expert. All right, keep that in mind. And thanks for this one, Chip Walter. These are Noahide laws being rolled out across the USA. If you don't know what Noahide laws are, look it up in the Talmuds. Okay. And thank you, Mountain Star Studio. Notice many glitches in the Matrix. Somebody watching. I mean, we do have to wonder sometimes, right? Is it all art, simulation, the Matrix style, and one day are we just going to pop out of it? That would be interesting. And thanks also for this one, Mountain Star, who says transparent ranked voting out T supremacy, nepotism. And thanks, Mountain Star Studio, who says midget horses been getting away with some Shiites. And shout out to Roger Meadows, who says, as someone who drove Uber, those credit scores will show you how we felt as drivers when you all would complain over BS. Assume not the algorithm will be, I think he's saying don't assume the algorithm will be fair to you. I hear you, Roger. And thanks, Joy X, who says, thanks, Sabby, for opening more eyes and minds. Thank you. And thanks for the super chat, Mountain Star Studio, who says, maybe this is a correction, transparent ranked voting, term limits, free speech. Thanks for that one. And just working our way through our queue here. We had a few of these built up. Thanks for this one, Nat the Cat Williams. Check out Rob Braxman phones and Linux for your computer. All right. And shout out to Deep Green VO, who says they want the world of iRobot, no free will at all. And shout out to Focus, who says those sunglasses look good. Well, thank you, Focus. There you go. Yeah, I should wear them more often. If only I could read while wearing them. Thanks. And thanks for the super chat, Wanker Tanker, who says genocide in Palestine still ongoing. Yeah, that's very true. And the killing, sometimes in chat we have to call it unaliving because YouTube will censor it, but I think we can at least say the word killing and genocide on the air verbally, at least so far, is still ongoing. And it's also important to remember that the real purpose, right? It's always, it's always that MC part of MCDS, right? The money and the corruption. What's happening in Gaza is at its core a land grab. And, I saw a report the other day talking about it. Israel is moving the yellow line, which is basically the land that you're just totally taking over now and moving that in. But their goal is to move all the Palestinians out that they can one way or another, whether it's by pushing them to other countries or by killing them, which they've done in that unimaginable number. And it's not going to stop as long as our government is supporting them, the U.S. government. So there is this demand, right, that it stop. But then you have to connect the dots. And as long as our government supports Israel, Israel's never going to stop. So we have to fix our government, right? We have to fix here at home first. So then the demand becomes fix the corruption, because that's the core of it. The billionaires, some of whom are Zionists, it's their project, pay and corrupt our government to support Israel in that project. The demand is to stop the corruption, stop that kind of support, and the solution is to look at how the big money works and flows and causes the corruption and, fix it. And, more details of that are on 11demands.org. And, there are specific ways to do that, but we got to get serious about it. And while I was yammering here, we had another super chat come in. We'll squeeze this last one in from our regular here, Sparky, who says parallel construction is how they got Elliot Spitzer. Interesting. Thanks for that, Sparky. All right. That's going to do us for us tonight. You can see the show in Sabby Live next this coming Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern is our Thursday show. I'm sure we'll have something good cooked up for you then. In the meanwhile, there's always clips and videos and things out there. As always, check out 11demands.org for that stuff and that project. And in the meanwhile, we're going to end it with the usual. Have a good night. Keep up that fight. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you next time.